All right, guys, welcome back to the Hat House. Really appreciate y'all making it back. Today we've got about 38 hats that we got going out and a little bit of inside baseball on one of these hats. You might be letting this hat go for a little bit too cheap. You might be letting it go for $5 or $10, but there's a brand called Twins Enterprise, and they have a franchise perfect fitted hat that you want to be on the lookout for. Sometimes it's really hard to find the right color combination, the right team, and the right size that you're looking for. This hat also has a really loyal fan base. There's people out there looking for these color size combinations, and they'll pay for these hats. You might be letting them go for $5 to $10 when you could actually be getting $20 to $30, and sometimes even more if you have one that's really rare. So make sure you look up these Twins Enterprise franchise fitted hats and see if you've got the only one on the market. And if it's a good size and color, don't let it go cheap. All right, the last tip that I have for you here at the Hat House is to make sure you get your free hat. I appreciate everybody that subscribed so far. We're going to continue to build this channel. I've made it even easier for you to get your free hat. All you need to do is to subscribe and then send me an email to the email down below. Let me know your YouTube handle, your address, and then the type of hat that you want, and I'll get one sent to you. Now, on to the hat sales. All right, first hat was this Los Angeles Kings. This was pretty cool, like corduroy by Mitchell and Ness. Snapback. Next up, we had Missouri Tigers. Just a regular strapback hat. Next, we had a vintage Cleveland Browns. Now, this one was one of the old sports specialties meshback trucker hats. Next up was Los Angeles Dodgers. This one went a little cheaper. Even had a cool side patch, but it was size 7 again, which does not sell for that great. Next up was a pretty good sale. USC Trojans. Cool underbrown. Also had the Rose Bowl game side patch. Nike hat. Next up was vintage starter Detroit Tigers. I thought this one would sell for a little more, but it did not, and it took a while to sell. It was on the Tri-Power starter tag. Really cool hat, I thought. Next up was a pretty trashed Patagonia hat. Lots of sweat staining and fading. Even some little dots on it. Next up was a Poshmark sale. This is a cat hat, rope trucker on the Tonkin tag. A little different color, almost like new. And then the last one going out today was Orvis hat. It's had the buzz off on it. This also went out on Poshmark. Nice Orvis dad hat. All right, next up was a vintage blank hat. Blanks always sell really well. This is a vintage rope. And yeah, it was a youngin hat, so it did really well. Nice color. Next up was a Nike Featherlight hat. Strap back Featherlight. Basic Nike hat. Next up was a combined order. We had a Ford hat and then a pheasant hat. Going out same buyer. Always appreciate the repeat. Next up was a Brooklyn Dodgers. This one sold really well. I think it was $20. 7 1/8 Brooklyn Dodgers hat. Next up was a Woolrich plaid. I call them hunting hats. They look kind of like hunting or camping hats. Really nice condition. A nice patch on it. Next up was a Kavu hat. Just a blue Kavu hat. These usually sell for 10 to 25. Just kind of depends. They're really well made though. Next up was a Nike golf hat with the golf course logo. I think it was Portland Golf Club, something like that. Clean condition. Next up was Atlanta Braves. Really cool black color. whenever you find them in the different colorways and then the traditional hat, they sell really fast. Nice Braves hat. Next up was a Mickey Mouse Disney hat. Disney Cruise Lines. Just a dad hat. Next up were some of our cross-listing sales. This was an Audi hat. Audi lightweight hat. Next up was a Chick-fil-A hat. Went out on Poshmark. Chick-fil-A brand. And the last hat for today was a Boston Bruins New Era. This was actually strap back. Alright, next up was a San Francisco 49ers New Era snapback. Super clean. Next up was a Nike visor. It was just damaged, so it didn't go for very much. Next up was a Dallas Cowboys New Era fitted. Glad they're doing so well. Next was a Miami Hurricanes dad hat with some sequins on it. Super cute. Then we had a Oklahoma Sooners top of the world strapback. Then we had a Chicago Bulls fitted. 7 3/4. Then we had a Minnesota Twins 3930 New Era. They're still in it. Next was an REO Speedwagon. This one wasn't vintage, but it still sold pretty well. Next we had a Boston Red Sox. This is a franchise fitted. These can do really well if you get the right colors and the right size. They can be hard to find your size and color that you want. Next up was a ladies John Deere snapback hat. Next up was a Air Force Zephyr strapback hat. Next up was a Stanford Cardinal dad hat. 47 dad hat. Next up was a Leg of the Owls. This is a nice winter wool or fleece hat, strap back. Next up was a San Jose Sharks. This is a brand, it's GCAP. They make some good vintage hats too. You want to keep a lookout for. This one was just strap back, which decreased the value. Missing the top button decreased the value. But if you find GCAP snapbacks, sometimes they can do really well. Next up was a Colorado Rockies starter. The game. Arc hat. This is a vintage hat. I thought it would go for a little more, but it didn't. Next up was a Panera strapback hat. Alright, the last one was a Green Arrow. This one went out on Macari. Snapback. Made by DC. Really cool hat. Alright guys, that's everything going out today from the Hat House. We're always shipping out hats. So if you saw something that you like, make sure you hit that button. We'll see you again next time.